Going to take the North and never give it back.
So that's a good pick. You get the corner. I got to go bold, right? I got to go bold for this.
Yeah, she's got some nice long
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Barron. Make sure to like and subscribe out there on YouTube so you can join in our quest for 5,000 subscribers. We're getting pretty darn close out there. Also, if you listen to podcasts, you can download this podcast everywhere you get your podcast. Just look for Unbearable Sports. Happy Easter, everybody. Didn't want to do a live show during Easter. I didn't know if there was anything that everyone was out there. But tomorrow on Monday, we'll be doing a fan-made mock draft, which we will go through live. And if you missed that last time, it is some of the most fun that we have out there. Even if you're just listening and you listen to podcasts, go out there, 7:30 on YouTube. You will see it, and it's just a fun time to be out there. So I can't wait to see all of you out there because, like I said, it's a blast. But today, it feels like draft season's actually starting out because also, if you haven't already subscribed or downloaded the podcast, my draft guide is coming out, and I'm giving it to you for free, just as a big thank you. It's been an amazing 2024 for the show so far, and I just want to give it back to you guys and just thank you for everything that you have given me and all the support that you have shown as well. So I'm going to be, hopefully tomorrow, I will have a link out there so that you can use it. Those that listen, it'll be out in the description. I'll let you guys know when that episode comes out. But I'm excited to show you all what I have. It's like right now, currently 80 plus different profiles, but I'm going to do more and more and more as we get closer to the draft. So today we're going to be breaking down some defensive tackles because I just really want to talk about my top 10 and talk a little bit about where this draft class sits, my opinions on this, because I've said this a lot of times on the show. I think that the Bears need a defensive tackle because we only have kind of 3 active good ones on this roster, and we know that the Bears like to kind of do those hockey lines. So today, I want to kind of identify some of those draft picks and kind of go from 10 all the way to 1 and really break it down into different tiers and other pieces like that. I don't do just a standard vertical big board. I go a little bit more into depth. So let's get this started and kind of the tiers that I have, just so everyone knows. You can see it, those watching on the left-hand side. I go day 3, early day 3, day 2, early day 2, round 1, and then elite. So if there's any elite prospects, I have at the top tier. So let's get started. And I want to talk a little bit about the day 3 prospects, even before I get into my number 10, because my number 10 prospect is a day 3 prospect. So first things first, I've made myself gigantic so that you guys can't see my actual elite round 1, all those other things. But with this, you see the day 3 prospects, and I kind of have 6 out there. So next year I'll have the graphics a little bit better. So I can only have 6 people inside of my big board. So the people that are inside of my day 3, I have Leonard Taylor, McKinnley Jackson, Mason Smith Leonard Taylor III from Miami, McKinnley Jackson out of Texas A&M. Then I have Mason Smith out of LSU, Mekhi Wingo out of LSU, then Christian Boyd out of Northern Iowa, and then Tyler Davis out of Clemson. Now, a lot of people, if you follow a lot of this, you might see this and go, I think Mason Smith's higher. I think Mekhi Wingo's higher. I think Tyler Davis is higher, or some others. But to me, when I look at this draft class, this kind of day 3 group, it's a lot of defensive tackles that there was a lot of people this year that you expected something more out of them. Mason Smith, the Bears might actually really, really like because he was seen as a top prospect. He injured his knee, and then he still has these really good intangibles, this really good physical profile. But ultimately, he has not done that at LSU. And Mekhi Wingo, I thought was solid. Tyler Davis, I thought was solid. Like there's just a lot of solid players, but nothing that really, really excited me with a handful of these day 3 prospects. And when we go through the upper tiers, you'll start to see, okay, yeah, this is their path to then do something larger. I thought a lot of these players below at the very bottom of day 3 were just, they might be rotational players, but I would beg to think that they would turn into something great. Maybe Christian Boyd out of Northern Iowa, just because of the giant question mark of how he is. But ultimately, I just wanted to go through that before I go with my number 10 prospect that I'll break down. And as you can probably assume, it's one of these players. I'm going to start with McKinnley Jackson, defensive tackle out of Texas A&M. He is my number 10 defensive tackle, but the consensus is that he's defensive tackle 12, number 123 overall on the consensus board. Senior, 6'1", 326. He's projected to go around rounds 3 and 4. That's where, to me, I see him more in that 4th round early. Like, he's an early day 3 type of a prospect. But yet again, McKinnley Jackson actually had a lot of expectations going into this season. Ultimately winds up with 27 tackles, 3 sacks, 8 hurries, a 76.9 run grade from PFF. It's a solid run defense grade, just in case if anyone's curious. And you look at his win rates: 8.7 pass rush win rate, 2.6% run win rate. Not great percentages out there, but ultimately what this guy does is he shoots the gap. And for those that don't know, shooting the gap is basically, if you think of your 5 offensive linemen, like put your hand out and then kind of those gaps in between your fingers. All that he does is he like kind of lines up and he just tries to get skinny and squeeze through those gaps to try and make the play. That's kind of his calling card. He's actually pretty darn good at it. That's how he wins. And the dude's 330 and he's able to do this. So that to me is his biggest strength. But the big question is, this guy is 330, and what I just did not see on tape is I didn't see consistent, like him being able to hold his gap, hold his assignment. And for being that large, you got pushed back a handful of times. But yet again, someone that I think a lot of people see as a higher potential type of player. I don't necessarily see that out of this guy. I think that McKinnley Jackson is just a solid, more that rotational, hence the reason why I gave him a day 3 grade. So even though that my rank is a little bit higher, I'm kind of a little bit lower when it comes to just overall how good I think that this type of a player is. But I think that he's definitely could be a rotational player if you end up selecting him. Another thing that I noticed on tape, dude's on the ground a lot. So that's something that you don't like to see, but he is just frequently being pushed around and a little bit on the ground. Yet again, we're going with my bottom number 10 out there. So also reminds me a little bit of Benito Jones for those that remember him coming out in 2020. So let's talk about number 9. And for those that are watching, you already know who this is. This is Leonard Taylor III, and out of defensive tackle out of Miami, 6'3", 305, only a sophomore. This guy was a big-time recruit out of Miami. He was seen as the next big guy, this incredible defensive tackle to come out of Miami. And in 2022, he played more of the 3 technique and looked really good. And that's why a lot of times I kind of give him a comparison to like a Zach Pickens or even like a Javon Dexter, where there's all these expectations. And did he live up to those expectations? Not so much. And last year, what I didn't really understand is they asked him to play more that 1 technique. So taking on more so 2 guys, taking on the center and the guard rather than just purely going against the guard. And because of that, you saw his production really dip. 20 tackles, 1 sack, no forced fumbles, and 17 hurries. 17 hurries is solid. And when you look at his actual win rates, 14.7% pass rush win rate, which is not so bad, especially when you consider that he's lining up more as that 1 technique than the 3 tech. And then a 6.6 run percent win rate. Okay, nothing too crazy, just a very okay rate right there. But when you think about this guy, I have him as my defensive tackle 9. He's consensus board 101 and defensive tackle 9 as well. And if you remember me talking about him, this guy was defensive tackle 2 for a while, for not just me, but a lot of big boards because of the potential. And this is why I think the Bears might like him. Now, one thing that Leonard Taylor has done is he has bombed in the pre-draft process. He is known as this athlete. He did not test like a true athlete, like that 5-star recruit. So to me, that's where overall Leonard Taylor, it's a very like bet. All these signs are pointing down. But if the Bears think that they could potentially get something out of him and say, hey, you know what? We can get the most out of this player because we like former 5-star athletes and former 5-star recruits that we can bring in and really develop. And if they think that, well, you struggled because they played you at the A gap. They played you in that one technique role. Now, he didn't incredibly struggle. He still had a 74.7 PFF grade, which was 143rd. But when you look at a lot of these defensive tackles that are down here, that's not so bad, I would say, overall. But I think overall, he's more of a 3 technique, and he still needs to get his hands up. I think that he, like similar to a Zach Pickens and a Javon Dexter, I think that he more so was trying to win purely based off athleticism, but he needs to kind of get his technique in hand and just his hands a little bit better, and I think he could potentially be something. And I think that's why the Bears might have some pretty good interest in him. Leonard Taylor should be there in probably the early 4th round range is kind of where I'm projecting him, unless a team looks at him and goes, I think I could get something more out of him. So that's kind of the day 3 prospects that I have out there, or people that I gave my grade of a day 3 prospects. So let's go one tier up to what I call the late day 2, early day 3 players. And to start this off, I'm going to talk about this guy is actually low key. I think that this guy might be a Chicago Bear. I think that this guy screams Matt Eberflus, and he checks a lot of the boxes that the Bears want to see out of a defensive tackle, and that is Dewayne Carter out of Duke. He's a redshirt senior, 6'2", 303. He is on the consensus board 107 and defensive tackle 10. To me, I have him at defensive tackle 8, so I'm a little bit higher than consensus on him. He's projected to kind of go, I would say, more late day 3 or late 3rd round, early 4th, and also kind of reminds me a little bit of Devontae Wyatt, which is very high praise, but this guy was incredible in 2022. I think that he was a top 10 graded player from PFF, but when you put on the tape, this guy, similar to a Devontae Wyatt, is a hand fighter. This guy knows how to leverage his hands. Very, very smart, very high IQ player. But also why I think the Bears would love him, this guy also high character. People just absolutely adore this guy and just very active in the Duke community, and three-time captain at Duke as well. So beloved by his teammates, beloved by the community, and that's someone I think Matt Eberflus might fall in love with. Very good hand usage, like I said. And that's where when I watch this tape, I'm tempted to even put him higher because I really, really, really liked what I saw. Now, some of the downsides. Why is he projected to go all the way down here? Well, like I said, last year, it felt like people were saying, okay, this Dewayne Carter, he's pretty darn good. And I felt in 2022, he was able to just kind of play that 3 technique, go against one player, be good. But then I felt this year in 2023, people were game planning against him a little bit more. And that's where you saw him really fall off. 6.2% pass rush win rate. That's not good. 4.6% run percent win rate. That's not good. 41 tackles, which is solid. Only 1 sack, 18 hurries. So that's what I'm talking about. And I think when coaches see this, they go, okay, I could take a Leonard Taylor, someone who does not use his hands as well, or even like a McKinnley Jackson, and I could maybe coach them how to use their hands. Dewayne Carter, this guy already knows how to use his hands. How much better can I make this player? That, I think, is going to be a big question that coaches are going to be asking themselves of a Dewayne Carter. Then another piece, too, is why he's also kind of falling is I think just his overall quickness, his agility, just there's something missing from the athleticism perspective for that next level. It doesn't mean that he's a bad athlete. And you look at his testing. He had a 4.99 40-yard dash, very good. A 10-yard split of 1.72, yet again, very good. And, but then you look at his agility grades. His agility grades, 4.48 grade at the shuttle and a 3 on the 3-cone. That's really where you see some of that quickness, some of that athleticism not showing up at the combine. But still, a 7.9 RAS score is nothing to scoff about. Still very good. And that's where I think that the Bears might be very interested in this player in the later rounds if they're not able to go defensive tackle early, or let's say they want to go, I really like Jared Verse, or if Dallas Turner falls to them, if they want to go defensive end, or one of the wide receivers is there, Rome Odunze. This could be a defensive tackle they pick up in the later rounds that is a good locker room person and someone that can play. I feel like he could be a contributor. Then the big question is, how much more can he move? Because he's more of that pure 3 technique, which I think would be good alongside Zach Pickens. And then you put a Gervon Dexter as more of that starter. So Dewayne Carter, my defensive tackle number 8. But I have one other defensive tackle that I kind of have in this tier of early day, in this kind of next tier up. And the other person I want to talk about is Michael Hall Jr. And those that are watching, I'm adding this to the draft guide. And this is why my draft guide might take an extra day or so. Up in the very top left, you'll see a little icon of Ryan Poles. And what I'm doing is I'm putting the icon of Ryan Poles for people that check the Ryan Poles boxes. What are the Ryan Poles boxes? That means that you graded above an 8.0 in the RAS score, and also you attended the Senior Bowl, because we know that like 90% of the people, I just made that stat up, majority of our players that we draft are from the Senior Bowl and that are good athletic testers. So Michael Hall Jr., you get the Ryan Poles badge as someone that Ryan Poles would really like. But I will say this, Dewayne Carter was just 0.1 away from getting that Ryan Poles badge. So I just want to bring that out because he's like right at the borderline. And, I was like, I'm just starting this out. I don't want to create any exceptions right there. But that's where Dewayne Carter, Michael Hall Jr. might be players that the Bears are looking at. But anyways, Michael Hall Jr., talked about him, I think last episode or 2 episodes ago. Michael Hall Jr., defensive tackle out of Ohio State, 6'2", 280. Very lightweight junior, and he did participate in the Senior Bowl. His strength, this guy is blazing fast, dominated the Senior Bowl. It seemed like he defeated everybody every single snap during the practices, and everybody reporting out there was just saying, Michael Hall Jr., holy crap. And because of that, he might be going in the second round. And you look at the consensus board. Consensus board has him number 59, defensive tackle 6. I have him, I'm slightly lower on him at defensive tackle 7. And you might say, well, you have a late day 2 grade on him. Why is that? Well, the reason why I have a late day 2 grade on him is because to me, he's that tweener. He's that very lightweight guy that wins with his speed. But with Michael Hall Jr., something that, and actually I think that he gained more weight, and I think now he's like around 293. But even though that he's a little bit bigger, I still question just, can he win at that next level? And to me, he's very, very, very boom or bust, because I think he could just absolutely dominate with just his insane quickness. But to me, he's just a 3 technique at the next level. And this is someone that I think is high risk, high reward, where I don't see him as someone that is just kind of, going around to different teams and contributing. I think he might be picked up by other teams if it didn't work out, like with the Bears, we'll say. But I don't think he really plays. That's why I have him a little bit lower, because I'm a little bit nervous about him. But I think obviously if people have Michael Hall Jr. higher, I get it. He's a very good athlete. That's what you need to know. Quick off the snap, and he wins that way. But when you look at his stats, 24 tackles, 1.5 sacks last year, 22 hurries, so a little bit better than the other people that we're looking at. But this is where he dominates. 18.3% pass rush win rate, 7.3% run win rate. But that pass rush win rate, that is very, very good. But overall, though, Michael Hall, good, aggressive player that you can get. But I think that he might get overdrafted just because of that athleticism. And when you speak of his athleticism, 9.56 RAS score, 4.75 40 time. Yeah, and here's his updated weight, 299 pounds. I got to update that in the draft guide. And then his 10-yard split, 165. Vertical, 33 inches. Just elite speed, great explosion, okay size, right? A little bit lighter, but also 33.5-inch arms. That's good. And you'll see with a lot of these players, some of their arm lengths are a little bit shorter. Michael Hall has that, like 33.5. It's nothing amazing, but it's good arm length that you want at that next level. So Michael Hall Jr., Bears could be looking at him, or other teams, and say, this guy has the explosion. This guy dominated against good competition at the Senior Bowl. What can I do at the next level? And the only thing that I'm a little bit nervous about, though, with the Senior Bowl piece is a lot of those, you win because you're just fast. So those fast people are going to look better in those practices, and that's Michael Hall. So overall, Michael Hall, my last of the early day 3. So now we go to my day 2 prospects that I have a day 2 grade on. Not necessarily where they should be going, but just people that I have a day 2 grade on. And this, I have one person in this category. One person that has a day 2 grade, and that is my D tackle number 6. That is Ruke Orhorhoro. And as you can see, another Ryan Poles icon. So he participated in the Senior Bowl and also probably had one of the best combines there. 6'4", 294, 29 reps in the bench, 34-inch arms, elite speed grade with a 4.89 40, 167 10-yard split, great composite agility grade, elite explosion with a 32-inch vertical and over a 9-foot broad jump. Like I said, this guy is just an elite athlete. If you look at his strength, athleticism. This is a redshirt senior out of Clemson, and on the consensus board, number 62 overall prospect, defensive tackle 7. I have him at defensive tackle number 6, and a lot of this is because I think he has a fairly high floor. Even though that he's a phenomenal athlete, I still think that he hangs around in the NFL, even if he's not able to develop a lot of these pass rush moves, because that to me is one of the biggest question marks with his game. Because when you watch his highlight reels, you go, dang, this guy can just truck people. This guy can run around people. This guy is fast. This guy is just fun to watch. Reminds me a little bit of Justin Madubuike, but Justin Madubuike understood how to develop pass rush moves later on inside of his career, and obviously is one of the more higher paid defensive tackles. Orhorhoro has that high ceiling because of his pure athleticism, and I think he has a decent floor for being such a good athlete because this guy can play any position that you want at the defensive tackle or on the defensive line. He can line up at D end as a bigger D end. He can line up at the one tech. He has that type of strength and speed. But yet again, this is just how he wins. And that's a big question mark for me because you look at his pass rush win rate, 8.7%. That is not great. 7% run win rate, which is solid. 25 tackles last year, 5 sacks, 17 hurries, and a 78.7 run defense grade. Yet again, played pretty good run defense. Now, the big thing, if I'm the Bears, I'm looking at this going, okay, this is someone you could probably get in the late second round, maybe early third. Maybe he's there at pick 75, but I think ultimately he goes a little bit earlier. And this is where you see a lot of the defensive tackles almost kind of like they're all going to be picked. It all seems like they're going to be picked in the second round. But if he drops, this could be someone that the Bears really fall in love with just his pure raw athleticism. But yet again, kind of has this good solid floor and foundation to his game that you can develop around. And if you can teach him these pass rush moves, this guy could be a pretty big beast out there. But yet again, something that I've mentioned in the past, it's difficult to learn pass rush moves. And like you can still refine those, but especially at defensive tackle, it may take another year for you to understand the pure pass rush moves because, you know, you're fighting two people at one time. So your instincts just kick in. And that's where his instincts right now is, I'm going to out athlete you. I'm going to run around you. I'm going to just try and bull you over rather than kind of get down to the foundational leveraging your hands and other pieces like that. So now, that's my only day 2. Now we're getting into the fun ones. My next tier is early day 2, late day or late round 1. So these are the really good players. These are the players that when you draft them, this is where if we're going to have a chance at any of these players, we would be trading the number 9 pick and try to accumulate more of those draft picks. So that would be like trading back with the Indianapolis Colts, trying to pick up a second, or like the Bengals, any of those other places a little bit later, kind of that 15 on that you might be able to try and snag a second round pick, maybe with the Saints that you could get that second round pick. But that's really where you're looking at, where with these players is trading back and getting a second round pick. And then some of these players should be available for the Bears. So let's go through who I have as the early day 2, late first round grades. So to start things off, my defensive tackle, number 5, and gets the Ryan Poles badge, Braden Fiske, defensive tackle out of Florida State, redshirt senior, 6'3", 292, consensus number 45 prospect, but defensive tackle number 5, and for me is also defensive tackle number 5. He's projected to go in the second round. A lot are saying potentially early second round as well. Reminds me a little bit of Osa Odighizuwa. And also his PFF grade last season, 73.9, which was 164th. Now, if he didn't grade well, why is he this high? Well, it's his first step quickness and just his athleticism. This guy was the best person at the scouting combine, in my opinion. He blew the doors off. 9.89 RAS score, 4.78 40-yard dash, running that at 292, and a 1.67 10-yard split. 33.5-inch vertical, over a 9-foot broad, 4.37 shuttle time. This guy just was an incredible athlete. And you put on the tape, he's that as well. He transferred from Central Michigan, I think 2 years ago, over to Florida State, and just was great. Fantastic. 43 tackles, 6 sacks, 19 hurries, a 73.7 pass rush grade. And his win percentages, 8.9 pass rush win rate, which seems a little low to me, and a 9.1% run win rate, which is very, very good. So this guy can play the run. He's solid against the run, but he's more of that kind of gap. Like he'll try to blow through the guy and just get more of that penetration out there. But really, ultimately, this guy has had the best pre-draft process out there. This was someone that was projected to go a lot later, and now he's just flying up draft boards because he was the best at the Senior Bowl. People, even though that Michael Hall was great, people were going, Braden Fiske is just insane, incredible. So more of that pure 3 technique, definitely at the size. And also too, even though that he's very quick, very bursty, you look at his hands and he plays with pretty darn good hands, just constantly attacking, very, very high motor type of player that I think that the Bears would really love. Now, what are some of the downsides? Now, he is a little bit lighter, and I just don't see him really kind of anchoring against players. Like I said, more that penetration type of attacker at the defensive tackle position rather than sit back, anchor, try and move people around that way. But also kind of short, some fairly short arms, only 31-inch arms, even though he's 6'3", 6'3 and a half. 31-inch arms, so pretty darn short. When you look at Orhorhoro, 34-inch arms for him, 31 for Braden Fiske. Now, Fiske doesn't necessarily leverage try to get his reach. Like I said, he's not block shedding that way. He's more trying to penetrate, and he just kind of wins with his athleticism. But still, so he doesn't necessarily leverage his arm lengths when you watch him on tape. But still, it is something that at the next level, you do want them to be able to engage and then rip and do different things, different pieces like that when they're trying to shed the people in front of them. So Braden Fiske, my defensive tackle, number 5, and I have a early second round or early day 2 grade on this guy. So let's talk about the next player that I have, my defensive tackle, number 4, and that's Kris Jenkins. Defensive tackle out of Michigan, senior, 6'3", 299. He is the consensus number 56 overall prospect. Defensive tackle number 5, my defensive tackle number 4. I like him a little bit more. I really do enjoy Kris Jenkins' tape. He's projected to go in the second round. This is one of my favorite players for the Bears to get. To me, he's a very high floor player because he's just got this raw strength. He's like his dad, where like the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So yes, he is actually related to Kris Jenkins, the former Carolina Panther. That's his dad. And this guy has kind of his raw strength. This dude is just I would say pound for pound, he's the most powerful player that I've seen in this draft. Just a raw strength guy. And you see it in the running game. And it kind of reminds me of Trevon Dexter, where I said Trevon Dexter just has this next level human strength for him playing the position. And Kris Jenkins has that to me. Also, 82.7 PFF grade, which was 22nd in all of the NCAA. Now, what really jumps out is the run stuffing ability of a Kris Jenkins. 12.6% run win rate. That is incredible. Last year, 37 tackles, 2.5 sacks, and 18 hurries. Now, this guy, like I said, phenomenal against the run, incredible strength, and really actually a pretty darn good athlete as well. I don't have his RAS scores out there, but it was above 8. Gives you everything that you want out of the defensive tackle position. And that's why, to me, he's a very, very high floor defensive tackle that you could get in that second round that can contribute day one. Heck, he could probably start for most teams day one. Now, why is he day two? If he's got this great athleticism, got this great strength, it's his pass rushing. I don't see a lot of good pass rush moves out of this player, and that's why I really like him. Because I think that you could start training him a little bit more with that pass rush arsenal, and it's not like some of the other players we talked about where he doesn't use any of his hands at all. He just hasn't been phenomenal at rushing the passer. Still an 11% pass rush win rate, which is not terrible, not bad. It's actually a good pass rush win rate. But that's where, to me, I just want to see that a little bit more. And I got to probably change my little draft guide. It says non-existent. That's a little bit harsh. I thought overall, he's just a good, fundamentally sound player. Gives you a lot of goodness out of that run defense out there overall. But overall, Kris Jenkins, my number 4 defensive tackle. Like I said, late first, early second grade on this guy. I really like him. So now, we got the top 3. We are not yet into round 1. This guy was just super, super fun to watch. One of just a very, very enjoyable player for me to watch that I still have early day 2 grade on. And he might even go in the first round. And that is TVondre Sweat, defensive tackle out of Texas. Now, this is a senior, 6'4", 366. This is a big, big man. He reminds me of Sam Adams. For those that remember him back in the day from the Buffalo Bills, just this gigantic, big player. Otherwise, insert large player here. Just gigantic player. But the big difference about this guy is he actually played a lot of 3 technique for Texas, rather than kind of the prototypical run stuffer, Eddie Goldman that just eats up blockers. This guy actually played a lot of 3 tech, but consensus board number 47, defensive tackle number 4. He's my defensive tackle number 3. He's projected to go in the second round, but I've said this before, because of his size, I could see him potentially falling because some people get concerned about this is a very large man. And we saw this with like a Mozzie Smith. We saw this with even like DeJuan Jones, the right tackle from Ohio State. When someone is this large, a lot of people go, well, what about his conditioning? I don't know. There's all these kind of question marks with them. He could actually fall to that number 75 pick, which I would absolutely adore. I think he's more of a 1 tech. That is actually a question that I have with this game too, is why wasn't he playing more that prototypical run stuffing type of a player where he's kind of going against 2 players? Instead, he's going against 1 guy, just the guard, and this guy just literally chucks people. He is so insanely strong. Yet again, Kris Jenkins, pound for pound, is probably the strongest, but TVondre Sweat is the strongest out of all the defensive tackles. This guy just hucks people out of the way. He's insane. I mean, he's 366 pounds. This guy is a mammoth. This guy is a behemoth out there. But they're out there, 45 tackles because you can't run by him last year, 2 sacks, 26 hurries for a man this size, and a 92 run defense grade from PFF. That is the 100th percentile. So the best, the best that you can get at run defense grade. That is because this guy is a literal wall. But even though he is a literal wall, 19.6% pass rush win rate. You heard that right. 19.6. This dude beats the guy in front of him. And honestly, he has a good arsenal of pass rush moves that I was really shocked at. Like, this guy knows how to use his hands in the pass rush, like when he rushes the passer, and he can get by people. Now, a lot of those pass rush moves hit because he's just so enormous. So when he does hit you, you go flying. He moves the person. But honestly, I like his feet. I like just the size. I like just everything about him. A big fan. But yet again, some of my concerns. People are going to look at him and go, this guy is a large, large man. I have concerns about his conditioning. Remember that with Eddie Goldman. Eddie Goldman, good defensive tackle. I mean, then all of a sudden he fell off the face of the earth. But it was that conditioning. That was a lot of the question marks that the Bears had. And that's the same questions with TVondre Sweat. What about his conditioning? Are you going to put him on a good plan? Do you feel comfortable about that? Because also, how many snaps will he actually play for your team? And yet again, why was he, in my questions, why was he not playing that one technique as much as he should have? We'll talk about Byron Murphy a little bit more. He was playing that one technique going against 2 players at a time. TVondre Sweat just going against 1. You would think it'd be logical because one guy's hardly 300 pounds and one guy's close to 400 pounds. So you'd think it would be switched, but instead, yeah, it was the other way around. So overall, TVondre Sweat, my defensive tackle number 3. And also, this is a good reminder. If you're watching right now, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to just drop a like, drop a comment. What do you think of my rankings so far? And is there anything that you disagree with or anything you agree with? Let me know down below in the comments. But let's start talking about the round 1 guys. And as you can, if anyone knows basic math, we have 2 people left. So these 2 people are definitely the top defensive tackles. And I think to me, these players are just neck and neck. Like literally, it's a flip of a coin. And these people are just defensive tackle 1, defensive tackle 2. So just because this next person is my defensive tackle 2 does not mean by a large margin. I think that both of these players are very, very good. So my defensive tackle number 2 that I have a round 1 grade on is Johnny Newton out of Illinois, junior, 6'1", 304. He is the consensus defensive tackle 2 and also my defensive tackle 2. And he's the consensus number 25 prospect on the consensus big board. Yeah, yet again, projected to go in the first round. And this is where these D tackles are all over the place. I think PFF has him as, I think now like their 8th overall player. But yet again, consensus is 25. I've seen him go in the teens. I've seen him go in the 20s. And this guy could literally go anywhere. And another guy reminds me a little bit of Osa Odighizuwa, but I also was trying to find a good comp for him. I can't really find a good comp yet. So I will update that a little bit more. But 84.9 PFF grade, 17th, which was the 17th best. Now, when you look at his strengths to me is his penetration. This is a penetrating defensive tackle, and I assume a lot of you have watched the Illinois games. This guy just would put the team on his back and just destroy the person in front of him and slide through and just cause havoc consistently. This guy also has some of the best hand moves that are out there. And to me, that's just his kind of calling card. I put penetration just because he gets through people like crazy, but his close second is his hands. Very, very, just a whole bunch of different pass rush moves. Very good. But also, to me, though, this guy is only a 3 technique. I think that he projects best in that role because he's, yet again, more the penetration style. Now, one of the biggest weaknesses that I saw was even though they claim he's 304 pounds, he plays very light. He has a different kind of body type to him. I can't even describe it. He just kind of plays a little bit light to me, has a little bit of a stubby nature to him. Like I said, he's 6'1". I think he's like 6'1 and a half officially, but a little bit shorter, smaller arms, but also to the anchor. And this is where I think when looking at the Bears, do they want a true penetration style? Even though that they say that we have a penetrating style to our defense, I still feel like the Bears like it when your defensive linemen can hold their position well. And I felt like Johnny Newton was more of someone who was always trying to kind of get past his guy in order to make the play rather than truly holding his gap and where he needed to be. I thought he struggled a little bit more on that. And yet again, a round 1 grade on him. And when you have a round 1 grade on someone, you're really kind of nitpicking. But I think that Johnny Newton, that's why he's not my defensive tackle number 1. I just felt like he couldn't do everything, even though this guy is phenomenal. If the Bears traded back and got Johnny Newton, I'd be a happy man. But anyways, 15.4% pass rush win rate, 52 freaking tackles last year. Like I said, did everything for the Illini. 7.5 sacks, 28 hurries, 7.4% run win rate, which is very good. His run grade, which was 77.1, was in the 99th percentile. So PFF liked him from there, and an 84 pass rush grade. Hit again. Good, high motor player that just consistently destroyed games. But yet again, looking at him more in the picks 20, in the 20 range, you could potentially get him if the Bears literally were like, you know what? Let's go way in the back. That's where Johnny Newton might not be a player for the Bears just because he might be way in the back. But also, too, another thing about Johnny Newton is I think it was foot surgery that he had to go through, and that was what ultimately caused him to kind of skip out on the combine. And I think that's why you see this next guy, my defensive tackle number 1, really kind of jump up on Johnny Newton, because since he can't test, I think a lot of people kind of forget how good he is, how good a Johnny Newton is. But still, like I said, these guys are a coin flip to me because I think that they're both just absolutely phenomenal players. My defensive tackle number 1, Byron Murphy II out of Texas. I talk about him all the time. Junior, 6 foot, 297. Yet again, 2 smaller defensive tackles in a Johnny Newton and a Byron Murphy. Also, Byron Murphy, he gets the Ryan Poles. He gets the Ryan Poles stamp out here. So 9.2 RAS score, 6 foot, 297, 28 bench reps, 32.375 inch arms, a 4.87 40-yard dash, 1.69 10-yard split, which is really freaking good. This guy just is incredibly explosive. That's the best way. It's not even first step quickness. It's just pure and raw explosion that he goes with. He's the number 16th player in the consensus big board, defensive tackle 1, my defensive tackle 1, projected to go round 1. The biggest comp, think Ed Oliver. He just reminds me so much of Ed Oliver as a player. 91.1 PFF grade, which was second in all of the NCAA. 29 tackles, 5 sacks, 36 hurries, which was number 2nd in the NCAA. 45 pressures, which was 5th in the NCAA. 80.5 run defense grade, which was in the 98th percentile. And he had the best pass rush grade according to PFF, which was 1st. Also, run win rate percentage was 9.5, which is very, very good. And then also a 19.6% pass rush win rate. Now, one thing I want to bring out about this too, the difference between Byron Murphy, yet again, 19.6% pass rush win rate. Then you look at Johnny Newton, 15.4, and TVondre Sweat, 19.6. And also even the Braden Fiske at 8.9. Keep in mind, all those players played the 3 technique. Byron Murphy is doing this at the 1 tech. Majority of the time, he's going against 2 people, and he has a 19.6% pass rush win rate. Keep that in mind, because he's asked to do a different job than those other players out there. And that to me is why he is my defensive tackle number one, because of the versatility that you can play with this guy on the interior. This guy can be the 3 tech. This guy can be the 1 tech. He can play any position that you want. Even though he's under 300 pounds, this guy anchors very, very well for his size. And I retweeted this out there where someone did a study on players that have we'll just say a thick lower body. They do a lot of their squats. They talked about how Belichick and all these coaches look for that, where it's, your glutes are your strongest muscle. And they specifically called out Byron Murphy II because they're like, this dude just is powerful. He has incredibly strong legs. And that's why you see this guy being able to anchor so well at his size. And that's why he reminds me of Ed Oliver. Ed Oliver had kind of that smaller length to him, but he was able to kind of still do very well at the NFL level because of just his pure raw power and strength and explosiveness. Great first step, does everything that you want. And as always, as a lot of these top players, just an absolute dog, relentless pass rusher out there. But yet again, I just want to emphasize why he's not elite. Why he's not elite for me is I don't see he's got a good first step, but it's not Aaron Donald. It's not this insane quick burst off the snap, or even like a Jalen Carter has had this amazing first step quickness, and he had the length as well. Byron Murphy, the big question I have is, even though that 32.375 inch arms is not terrible, it's still something that for someone who needs to win and kind of like have that, shed some blocks, that is a slight concern, because that's how he kind of wins in the run game a lot, is anchor and shed. So with longer arm defenders, he had some problems with at the college level, and he's probably going to have some of those same issues at the NFL level. But yet again, Byron Murphy, I've said this before, this could be someone that the Bears ultimately target. If they really, really want a defensive tackle, and like I said, he's got the Ryan Poles, mantra. He's got the super high RAS score. He was very good at the Senior Bowl. He's someone, and he's versatile. So I think that the Bears would really, really like him. So, any elite players? The answer is no. The elite category, it's exclusive, and I don't think Byron Murphy or Johnny Newton are necessarily elite. They're very, very, very good players, and that's why you see Johnny Newton going in the 20s, Byron Murphy also kind of going in the 20s, going in the teens now, and the highest that I've seen him go is to the Bears at that number 9 spot. But ultimately, these defensive tackles, I think when you're comparing them to the defensive ends, I think that the defensive ends rank higher for me on an overall big board, but this is kind of the defensive tackle group. And when we look at this overall, and yet again, when I have this out there, those that are listening can see this as well. Round 1, I have 2 players. Late day 1, early day 2, I have 3 players. Day 2, I have only 1 player, with that being Ruke. And then late day 2, early day 3, I have 2 players as well. And then everyone else, day 3. And that's why I kind of emphasize the importance of defensive tackle, because to me, I look at this and you only got like 8 good players. To me, 8 solid players that I think that are draftable, which to me is not great. I think everyone else is kind of more on the developmental side. You need to get something out of them. But that's why I keep on harping about this defensive tackle position. But like I said, let me know in the comments what you think, because I'm a little bit farther down. I think Mekhi Wingo was defensive tackle number 6, which I was actually really shocked to see. It's a solid player. I think he's graded well and other things, but the LSU defensive tackles, I was just not really impressed with overall. Just very solid, very okay. But like I mentioned, we've been going at this for about 50 minutes. I hope you enjoyed this. So if you're still listening, still watching, make sure to like and subscribe out there on YouTube. And like I mentioned, we're going to be having the draft guide coming out. Rate 5 stars everywhere you get your podcast. Also, tomorrow, 7:30, we'll be doing our live fan mock draft. I can't wait to see all of you out there. Happy Easter yet again. And with that, Unbearable Sports Podcast, we are out.
got some nice long hair, and you know that she's